Welcome to Bird Burger. When I'm looking around YouTube, it's not often that I find myself coming across new inspirational wildlife photography videos from other creators that I don't know. The other day, a video by Jenn Gauss popped up, and to my betterment, I found myself captivated by the story that she told of how she spent 300 hours to capture a photo of a kingfisher underwater. In her story, she tells of the hours that she spent, how the plan developed, and how she succeeded and failed, and I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. I had to bring her on today to talk about this masterpiece of a story, so I'm excited to introduce you all. Jenn, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm super excited to have you on, and man, what an incredible story that you're able to share, and I'm super excited to be talking about that soon. Yeah, your experience was just this beautiful story of kind of the pinnacle of what wildlife photography means to a lot of people, in my opinion.
Mm.
What makes me so excited about wildlife photography personally is that chase and that pursuit of like going after this image that you have envisioned in your mind, in your brain, or going after this species that you don't often get to capture, or a bunch of different things. And the feeling that you kind of get when you're after that. And it kind of just makes you so desperately, want to work for it and chase it. Do you find yourself relating to kind of the same drive? And if so, what gave you this inspiration to achieve this type of shot, even after so many kind of grueling hours of trying to pursue this image?
Yeah, it's a really interesting point actually, because I definitely enjoy I completely agree with you on the sort of the chase and the sort of strategizing. It's almost like a bit like a hunt.
Mm,
And it's super exciting getting to know like a different species and the way they work. Um, but I'll be honest, I think a big part of my drive is that end goal, that
mm,
I think less about um the actual journey, and I'm just fixated normally on like what am I actually trying to get.
mm.
And I think that was a major factor in this video. I was solely like, I'm gonna get some footage
Yeah.
of a kingfisher underwater, and I was single-minded about that, really. And I think it showed in the video. I think that the single-mindedness of that end goal was really what drove me the whole way. And yeah, exactly like you say, even after all those grueling hours, it was the end goal that ultimately kept me going.
Yeah.
um, and the initial inspiration, I don't know really. I think I've always thought kingfishers were super charismatic. I think a lot of people feel that way. They're just very beautiful in color, and I think watching them dive for their prey, like they just have so much agility and speed, and they're just beautiful to watch. And I think I got lucky with finding out that there were some local to me, so it that became the project, and really it was about giving myself a learning project. I think ultimately, it
Yeah.
was a good way for me to practice, and to get to know a species, and really focus on um, yeah, just
Yeah.
learning, bettering my video skills. Yeah, so that was the inspiration, and the drive was ultimately the end goal. And actually, I kind of almost want to flip that question back at you, because I know that like the chase is part of it, but would you be do you think you'd be as driven with the chase if you didn't achieve like an end goal?
Well, yeah, that's a good question too. And yeah, thanks for flipping that back on me. I think yeah, I always get like I don't know if jealous is the right word because I don't get jealous, but it's always I guess the word would be interesting to me that there's certain types of wildlife photographers, right, who are like just super content with the idea of just being out in nature and just whatever comes that day is like just brings them joy and all that stuff, and that's great. Like, so for people who are watching that, like that's awesome that that's how they can experience wildlife photography, right? But I know for myself, I'm very much the same as you, whereas like if I don't have something that I'm working towards, and whether that's trying to like betterment of like a new type of shot that I've never been able to achieve before, and the excitement of that, or a new species or a rare species or something like that, if I don't have something that I'm driving towards, it's really it feels a little bit purposeless for me. So I definitely can relate to you a lot in that. But yet at the same time, I do find myself often uh enjoying, like when I look back at the time, kind of 50-50 almost, enjoying the journey as well as the result, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
while it is that in force or like ahead of time, as I'm looking towards the future, it is mostly that end result that I'm like driving towards and motivated towards. When I look
Yeah,
back, I find it more 50-50 of like, man, I'm really proud I was able to get that shot maybe, or, you know, do that experience or whatever it was. But then at the same time, the other 50% of my enjoyment is like, man, that was nice just being present out today in nature
yeah,
and, you know, all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
So yeah, I think we can relate quite a bit in that. But yeah,
yeah, yeah.
it is interesting when you find those people. I don't know if you've been able to do the same, but find those people that are, you know, just like, oh, I just love taking a walk out in the woods and seeing whatever I
Yeah,
can
yeah,
find
yeah.
and stuff. And I'm like, I can't do that. I have to have a purpose for being there.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And I met people, in the shooting of that video, really.
Mm,
A lot of photographers out that are local to that park that, yeah, would always walk around with a camera and quite happy to just keep walking and whatever they come across, they'll just sort of seize the opportunity and shoot and they're quite happy to keep going like that. And I think that's beautiful. Um, but there was me like a statue in one spot
yeah.
trying to achieve one very specific thing, whilst other photographers were sort of quite happy to just capture things as they saw them. So yeah, like very different approaches, but yeah,
Yep.
but
Yeah.
I can relate to both. Yeah,
Yep, most definitely. Yeah, that's good.
yeah.
Yeah, planning, I feel like so kind of along that vein, right? Planning and strategizing in wildlife photography can very often be underrated. Can you tell me a little bit more in detail about how you kind of planned or worked to plan out the shot and try to capture this shot?
Initially, the planning was really just about getting to know the species. I just did my usual sort of reading up on the internet. What was I dealing with? What is normal kingfisher behavior?
Mm,
I knew I wanted to get footage of them diving, but what times of day are they normally diving? Is it normally dawn and dusk? And where would I normally find them? All the kind of the basics of getting to know your subject, really.
mm,
Um, and then I ultimately went on a little scouting mission. So I'd seen on the internet that kingfishers were seen in my local park. So I went off stupidly without my camera on a scouting mission.
yeah.
Literally walked up to this part of the river, and there was one right there, and it dived right in front of me, and I was just like, my God, I
Taking it
don't even have
back.
my
Yeah.
camera. Yeah, so I ran off to get my camera, but I was super lucky in that moment because I didn't have to work too hard to find a location in a way.
Mm,
So in that respect, I didn't do too much on the planning side of finding a location. The location kind of found me in that
mm-hmm,
respect. And and actually that spot became the spot that I used for the entire duration of that journey, really, because it was nice and open. So I did do a little bit of walking up and down the river, and I had to think a little bit about where I was going to film. Where could I get the camera in the water? I needed to be shallow enough so that I could actually get in and put the camera in the river. But yeah, I was lucky. It just seemed to fit. I could see plenty of perches. I'd already seen that the kingfisher was diving,
mm-hmm.
clearly catching prey in that spot. So yeah, I didn't have to work too hard on that side of planning. I managed to come across a location which was pretty good.
Most definitely, yeah. Subject is so important to understand, and that's awesome. You had a good location with them. Still, though, I know even beyond that, I mean, to capture an underwater shot where you're doing it as essentially like a camera trap in a way. I know there's a slight difference from what you were doing in a camera trap, but a very similar idea where you're placing a camera, right? You're trying to wait for it to hit that right spot. Like, I know that's a lot of work. So even though I know you're
Yeah.
saying it's not like it was like felt like too much planning, like I know that it was a lot of planning from a camera and logistical standpoint at the very least. So that's very cool. Was there a way that you kind of kept track of like how to figure out these camera angles, where to place your camera, stuff like that on location?
I spent a lot of time just observing them, really. I Every time I was out there, I had a lot of time. because
Yeah.
sometimes nothing was happening. But I ultimately just tried to log everything, observe and log. So I would just make notes of where I saw them land. You know, pretty much every tree and bush
Mm.
ended up having a name by the end, because it's like, right, you know, 8:30, they've landed at the waterfall, and they've dived off into the left bank, and then they flew upstream, and you know, 8:45, they've come back downstream. And yeah,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time just logging that and then reviewing it. Right, okay, these are the places where they land, and that's how I kind of got a sense of where their preferences were. Um, you know, the particularly the waterfall, the bush near the water, the little waterfall, it wasn't really a waterfall, a little brook.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
they would land there all the time, but they wouldn't necessarily dive. So it was getting that sense of where the prey were as well. So I would review the footage on the
Mm.
GoPro, because I would leave that recording, and I'd make notes about what I saw. You know, was I seeing lots of sticklebacks? Was I seeing just a few? Were they actually just transient, or were they always there in front of the camera?
Mm.
So yeah, definitely a lot of reviewing a lot of footage, and making a lot of notes, and then just trying to make my best guess as to where the camera should go,
Yeah.
to maximize my chances, even though it still
Yeah.
took forever, despite my
Yeah.
excessive logging. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 your obsession with it. No, that's super cool. That's really cool. And I think that's a really good like lesson in like what it takes sometimes to try to get that shot right, you know. Because a lot of times I think it could be very frustrating for people. When especially like newer wildlife photographers who don't know the game as much, right? And they're like, even some of the students that I've worked with in their beginning stages, and they're like, you know, like, oh, I went out today, I didn't get anything that I wanted, you know, and it's like that's just how it goes sometimes, you know. And in your case, it was 300 hours of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but very cool. Kind of along that vein, I don't want to give away too much for those who haven't watched your film yet. So if you guys haven't watched it, I would highly recommend going to check it out because it's a very good story, like I said, shared before. So I don't want to give away too much, but I think the beautiful thing about the film is that while watching it, you seem to convey this sense of satisfaction in your experience, regardless of whether you were able to capture the perfect shot or not at the end of the day. Of course, we talked about before, like that is the drive and that's what you're going for, right? And there's a lot of excitement with that, but still you were able to kind of like reframe at the end and be like, this was still a really cool experience that like you're probably never going to forget. Right. So,
Yeah.
to me, I think this is very relatable because, even though that pursuit is often what drives me to do, to crave wildlife photography, I often walk away feeling much more satisfied, with the experience than, like just regardless of whether I would have gotten the perfect shot or not. So, can you tell me a little bit about how you dealt with not getting the perfect shot that you wanted at the end of the day? You did get an image, right? But you didn't get the perfect shot that you were hoping for. And how were you still able to appreciate your experience, and what did you get out of your experience?
Hmm. Yeah. So I'd say, how I dealt with it, with reluctance. I'd say
The honest
initially,
answer.
yeah,
Yeah.
honestly, like, I wasn't satisfied initially.
Mm,
I wasn't.
mm-hmm.
But that is purely because I became so single-minded about it. Um,
Mm,
and I had, the clear vision of what I wanted it to be like, even if I could have told myself, well, I'm shooting on a GoPro, I'm not shooting on a super high speed camera. I haven't got crystal clear water that I'm dealing with. I kind of knew all of those technical limitations. Um,
mm,
but still, you dream big. You dream
yeah.
big, and
Yeah.
you hope that stars align, and that you're going to get this perfect thing. So yeah, initially I it took me a while to kind of make peace with it, I'd say. And as I sort of allude to in the video, it was definitely me, kind of needing to reframe the purpose in my mind, or the
Mm,
test, as I call it. And once I'd reframed that, then I kind of made peace with it. And and certainly now I feel super satisfied with it, and I think part of that
Mm,
comes um, with getting really beautiful feedback from people, and connecting with people over it, and that has been the satisfaction, in all honesty. Obviously I look back at the experience and I look back at it fondly. I absolutely adored the Kingfishers. I adored that park. I went back to the park the other day and just sat on the bench, and it's beautiful there.
mm.
So I definitely look back at it fondly, but the end result took me a while to sort of like deal with.
Accept it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, purely because of my mindset before it, I think is
Yeah.
is is what it was about.
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think that's a great reminder for people who may be geared a little bit more like what we were talking about, you and I, where it's like very motivated by the end result. So,
Mm-mm.
yeah, and I think I really appreciated also your experience, because as someone myself who, like, I didn't get a handout, like for example my wildlife photography career. I've been working to grow it, right, and I've been super thankful for all you guys, that have been helping me grow it, and everyone that's been supporting me and all the things I've gotten to do. But I've had to grow it slowly, and I was just like, literally, I mean, 3 years ago, less than 3 years ago, I was like an average guy on Instagram with 500 followers, and now we're over 110,000. And on
Yay,
YouTube, we've
awesome.
grown this channel from zero to like, well, this channel is actually very new, so not this channel, but my main channel, we've grown, a lot, and stuff like that. And so, for me, as someone who's like, I don't have any of the $20,000 lenses, right? Like, I wasn't someone who, like, I got a contract right out the gate and I'm like out doing these crazy things. I'm doing more down to earth, relatable stuff that people like you and I would experience. And so I love watching your video, how it's taking what you're given in your community, in your area, and like the with the tools you have, like you said, a GoPro, as opposed to, you don't have this $10,000 camera with underwater housing that you're able to, like, make out, and you're not doing it in, some sort of, fabricated dive pond or something, or
Mm,
so it makes it very relatable, and it's very cool to watch. So,
thank you.
um, yeah, so cool once again. And I also really quickly want to touch just on your storytelling as a video creator. And I know most people that follow this, are really in it for the wildlife photography, but whether they know it or not, the way that we tell stories as wildlife photography YouTubers really makes a huge difference in their enjoyment of the film, right? So your storytelling skills are fantastic. I felt like you just brought me through like a roller coaster of emotions during the film. Like, there's moments where you're like excitement, like it's like, oh, she's about to get the shot, and then it's like a dip, and it's like, oh, it wasn't, you missed it, or like something like that, right? And so I think it's really inspiring, in the sense that your story is very like relatable once again to the audience, and it isn't necessarily such like this huge spectacle. I feel like
Mm.
personally, I'm trying to even work in my types of films with how can I make my stories feel more that way, because I have like this vision for a high level of quality and kind of like cinematic nature to it, but at the same time I'm trying to think of how can I make mine a little bit more down to earth at the same exact moment, and make it a little bit more relatable. So you did a great job of achieving that kind of down to earth feel. How did you plan out and execute your story that you created for this film?
Hmm. So I guess at the beginning there wasn't really much planning right at the very beginning,
Mm.
because I cared only about getting that shot, and I had no idea whether I was going to get that shot in 3 weeks or 3 years. Um, that is the honest truth. There was no plan at the beginning other than to just
Mm.
get. I ultimately wanted a sequence of above water cutting to underwater, going back to
Mm.
above water. That's what I wanted for the sort of mini sequence. But it might have been that I got super lucky and I got that shot in 3 weeks, and then it would have just been a clip. It wouldn't have been
Yeah.
a story. But then in the same breath, I didn't deliberately just eke out the journey so that I could produce a story. I genuinely
Mm.
just got really obsessed with it. So yeah, so initially there was no plan,
Mm.
but I did recognize along the way, as I was starting to find things difficult, that perhaps I should turn the camera on myself and capture a few moments where I was either feeling super excited or super frustrated, and that actually those might come in use when I eventually reach the end. I think I had no real idea of how things were going to pan out along the way,
Yeah.
but I just tried to just capture a variety of things and turn the camera on myself and talk to the camera when I felt it appropriate. But obviously there were so many bits that I kind of missed. There were a lot of key moments that I missed because I didn't have anybody with me, and sometimes
Yeah.
I just simply didn't have a camera, ready to pull out of my pocket and turn on myself. Um, so I think a lot of the kind of storytelling ultimately came right at the very end. I think at the point where I
Mm.
decided to let the project go and let it sit, and when I sort of started really looking at how to tell the journey, I think that's where the creativity started really, and it was ultimately in post
Mm.
because the arc of the story kind of told itself. In all honesty, I yeah, the main narrative was exactly how it happened. But
Mm.
for me, the art or the challenge for me was to try and tell that in a way that was hopefully engaging for people
Captivating.
watching.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the main questions that I was sort of asking myself was, well, what emotions do I want people to feel? So actually, your comment about taking you on a roller coaster of emotions means a lot to me because that's precisely what I wanted people to feel.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's really beautiful to hear because I wanted people to feel at the beginning like my sort of naive hope, my excitement and how much I loved being in that park, but then my kind of descent into
Yeah.
into frustration and despair, and then ultimately sort of how I felt at the end, and so that's kind of what I homed in on when I tried to think about how to tell the story was what emotions do I want people to feel, or what, yeah,
Yeah.
what sort of do I want them to understand my emotions as I went
Mm.
along. Yeah, so that's what I tried to
Yeah.
focus on.
I love your answer to that, and that it explains a lot of that authenticity that comes across in your film, even. And so you did a beautiful job of representing that. So great
Thank
job
you.
there. Yeah. So do you have any kind of big projects or pursuits that you kind of plan on fulfilling next? Now that you've already spent 3 hours on this, sorry, not 3 hours. That would be doing a major injustice to what you just did. 300 hours. Do you have any kind of big kind of plans like this that you're wanting to pursue next?
Mm.
Or are you just kind of seeing what comes next, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I've definitely got a couple of ideas up my sleeve. So one project is definitely going to be a wildlife project. I'm a really keen scuba diver. I love being in the sea, but I'm very much a sort of fair weather tropics scuba diver.
Yeah, not cold
And
waters.
not cold waters, but obviously I live in the UK, and so that project is kind of just going to explore um, mainly my relationship with the sea and the water, and how much that I guess just the kind of the not juxtaposition, but I guess the extremes of that you might sometimes really love something, but you kind of also might really fear something at the same time.
Mm.
And I want to explore those emotions, and it may not necessarily just be about myself, and maybe about other people too. But I
Mm.
want to explore that a little bit more around British waters and British wildlife, marine
Yeah.
wildlife. Yeah. Um, but my more immediate project is actually not wildlife related at all. So dancing has been a massive part of my life for a long time, and I love the sort of hip hop and breaking world as much as I do nature. And one of my close friends who inspires me a lot is going to be the subject of a little mini documentary, and I want to explore what hip hop means to him, and how he uses that in his everyday life for creative expression. So
Yeah.
that's going to be my most immediate project, and it will kind of be nice to be able to direct my subjects for a little
Yeah.
while,
Yeah. That's super cool. Yeah, yeah. Wildlife photography. That's the roughest part. Is yeah, you don't get to have any say in whether your actors show up that day or not. And so
Yeah,
sometimes you go out to your set for the day and there's no actors there, and you're like, why am I
exactly.
here? What is
Yeah,
what is the purpose in my being here?
precisely.
So, yep,
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. The amount of times
yep,
I sort of thought, God, I just feel like such a numpty. Like I'm just
yeah,
stood right by this river, waiting for the star to show up, and she's not even
yep,
bothering.
yep, yeah, yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
super
totally
cool.
feels like that.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
super cool. Well, thanks for coming on today. It was really good
thank
getting to have
you.
you. So, yeah, best of luck in your journey forward, and I hope you're able to create more meaningful and impactful content. So,
Thank you. Likewise, likewise. Keep inspiring people. Like, yeah, it's super nice to just connect with people that are sharing the love of this art form and yeah, hopefully inspiring people around the world to pick up a camera and do the same thing. So yeah,
yep.
yeah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. If you guys haven't checked out Jenn's channel already, make sure to check it out in the description below. It's an amazing video that, again, I'd very highly recommend for you to watch, to be inspired, and just see the process and how she does things. I'm also finally back after the Bird Burger photo competition, where I had to take a long hiatus, month and a half off of wildlife photography, just because I was so busy and just obsessed with that and trying to get that down for you guys right. So I finally have another video releasing on my main channel tomorrow, so I'm super excited for that. Hope you guys are able to check that out. Make sure you subscribe to Bird Burger below as well. I'd be honored to have you here on the channel, and I'll see you guys next time.